Hi, welcome back to my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding, with me, Andreas Yulianto, from Jakarta International University, Indonesia. Today is the sixth meeting of this class, and today's topic is about language and identity in intercultural communications. Now, let's begin this chapter with the learning objectives. At the end of this chapter, everybody who is watching this video is expected to be able to, the first, define identity. Second one, identify and discuss multiple characteristics of identity. The third one, explain how identities are shaped and formed. Fourth, identify, define, and provide example of different types of identity. The fifth, describe ways in which people communicate their identities to others. And then the sixth, explain how and why identities may be contested or challenged. The second one, describe the relationship between language and culture and identity. And the last, explain the role of identity in intercultural communications. Those are the learning objectives of today's meeting. Let's begin with our first discussions. Identity is not something one has, but something that develops during one's whole life. Well, identity is a principal topic in the study of language and intercultural communications. Our sense of self and also position in the world impact our relationship with other human beings. The language we use in our cultural socializations influence how we see ourselves and communicate with people who have different backgrounds, such as the linguistic and culture and also religious. After defining what is meant by identity, we would like to explore the impact of the socializations process on identity development in a various cultural contexts. Yeah. We also then turned our attentions to other characteristics of facets of identity that can influence intercultural relations. Yeah. Here, the discussions begins with the theories from the Beijing. Identity is not something one has, rather it develops. What does this mean? Of course, in our primary socializations process, we meet many people coming from different cultural background, and they brought their own identity. This characteristic and also facets of the identity will influence our intercultural relations. We will have uh, discussions about the connections between the identities, language, and also culture in today's meeting. Let's continue. Before we go further, the definitions and descriptions about the identity. Here, we'll have the characteristics of the identity. Recent scholars, as cited in Jane Jackson's 2014, identities are first, developed through primary socializations. Second one, formed in different ways in different parts of the world. The third one, multiple and complex. Fourth, both dynamics and stable. Fifth, both chosen and ascribed. Sixth, variable in strength and salience. And seventh, conveyed through verbal and nonverbal means. Those are the characteristics of the identity. And identity is basically our self concept, or it is our sense of self. Identity defines how we see ourselves in our place in the world. Before we examine the various types of identity, it is helpful to have an understanding of current views about the characteristics of identity. Now, let's begin with the first characteristics of the identity. That is, identities are formed during during the socialization process. Identities are formed and identities are developed. We remember when we were young, we begin to form uh, our sense of self through the primary socializations process. And like social institutions such as schools, education system, religious organizations, or even our family, yeah, they play a role in determining how we develop our social, uh, our identities as a social beings. As young children, we continuously receive messages about who we are and how others see us. And over time, through the observations and also social interactions, we begin acquire the means of the identity and from the let's say the communications, let's say from the our daily interactions, yeah, and of course through others we become ourselves. We learn from other people, our family, or even from the uh, mass media such as television, radio, internet, so on and so forth. As we establish our own identities, we learn what makes us similar to some people or community and also different from others. We learned what makes us similar and also what makes us different from others. Let's say we realize that we are different in gender, in also age affiliations, ethnics, religious, and so on. Yeah. In the process, we develop the knowledge and skills which is necessary to form and nurture social connections with members of the groups we belong. Although our identities can provide us with a sense of belonging in an increasingly complex world, they can also serve as barriers to successful interactions, yeah, successful intercultural interactions. Now, we know that our identities are formed, are habitually developed, are habitually uh, practiced during the socialization process. We also see that identities are shaped in diverse ways in different cultural contexts. The primary socialization process, of course, differs among and within cultures. And the ways in which people are socialized differently in culture, in society. Yeah. And the cultural settings around us, of course, they have an impact. Yeah. They influence one another. We can say like our linguistic and cultural backgrounds also can influence how we use a language, how we behave some things. Yeah. In some contexts, individualism, as Jan here explains, uh, young children or people are encouraged to develop a strong sense of self. Let's say here, individualism, the dimensions of culture that refers to the rights and independent actions of the individual. This encourage the young people, young generations, or young children to acquire the and also to adopt the individual characteristics. Yeah, and you know that um, the individualism here becomes the preference, becomes the uh, let's say the characteristics of people because they have the independent self control, where this tends to be self perceptions that emphasizes one's autonomy and separateness from others. Our parents strive to foster self-reliance and strong independent identity in in children or in our characteristics in our life, so that children will develop into mature, responsible adults who can fend for themselves and make worthwhile contributions to society. And in cultures, apart from the individualisms, uh, people also try to develop the collectivism. Here, Jan 2007, it is about the dimensions of culture that refers to independence, groupness, and social cohesion. We, rather than I, is emphasized. The involvement of parents and grandparents or our families in the children's life decisions. Yeah, let's say the decisions to have a higher degree where they want to join in any organization and in a career path, in the place of residence, so on and so forth. This contribution, this involvement may continue well into adulthood. Family duties and responsibilities emphasized and are emphasized, and several generations of family may live together. Although the process of identity may differ among and within cultures, all of us develop a sense of who we are and how we fit in society, right? Uh, through interactions, through messages we receive from other people, from the world around us, we formed our uh, different perspective, different characteristics. Yeah, and of course, it's different from how particular culture receives certain messages, certain uh, socializations, and Of course, that the primary socializations and uh, how we receive all of these things are quite different one and another. And an interpreting self-construct here is a self-perception that emphasizes one's relatedness to others. We as a social being, human being, we need each other. We live together as a group, as a family, so on and so forth. So we build here, some people might prefer to build the collectivist, some might prefer to have individualism, so on and so forth. Well, the second one is the characteristic of the uh, identity. Here is the multiple and complex. We carry a bewildering range of different and at times conflicting identities around with us in our heads at the same time. There is a continuous smudging of personae and lifestyles depending where we are at work, on the high street, and the spaces we are moving between by more 1989. Individuals have multiple identities and they have different aspects of themselves in diverse social and cultural contexts and circumstances. Let's say when we are at the workplace, we become the worker. Let's say we become a teacher or a doctor or other things. But then when we are at home, probably we become a husband or we become um, uh, a part of or a social part of the community, a leader of the community. Or let's say we can also, let's say, becomes ourselves like define ourselves like becomes the son or even elder brother in family or anything. We have a lot of rules. We have identities, different place, different context, different settings. We have different identities. Yeah. And whether we are aware of it or not, each of us has multiple dimensions to our identity. And of course, different time and different in a particular social situations or context. Now let's learn from the case study. People now find him strange after he comes home from work in Europe. He became colder and less expressive than he used to be. Daniel has now changed many things in his life. Now he likes to dress luxuriously and loves to go shopping. Worse, he withdraws from the social circle around him. Can you try to figure out why and what is the topic of this case? What happens actually here? What happened with Daniel? You may discuss it with your friends. Well, this case probably commonly happens in society around us, or even ourselves experience this one. The answer is probably in this case. We learn that identities are dynamic. Bayesian et al. 2004 explains that identity is not something one has, but something that develops during one's whole life. If we refers to the previous case study, I think that Daniel experienced certain situations where those situations determine or even influence himself. Now he becomes someone else, or he has different characteristics than he used to be, right? And we are sure that these situations also um, regularly happens in our daily life when we initially have a certain characteristics, but gradually we change to be someone else, to have someone others characteristics, because by the time, yeah, day by day we are socialized, we interact with other people, and our characteristics also grow. That's why here identities are dynamic. The meanings that young adults or people attribute to certain aspects of their identity, yes, such as age, ethnicity, gender, language, nationality, may be quite different from when they were young, when they were young children, when they were adolescents. Yeah. As we measure and gain life experience, whether in our home environment or abroad, we may express our evolved sense of self in a variety of ways. We may also alter our nonverbal behaviors, yeah, to reflect the changes in, let's say, in our socio-economic status or even in the social identities. Let's from Daniel. Probably he was a poor. He like used to wear a dull clothes, let's say. But right now, after working from abroad, working from another country, he became rich. And right now, his lifestyle has changed. He right now likes to wear the beautiful dress, expensive dress, so on and so forth, right? Or even like in another case, we may live in a casual clothing, but when we become a professionals, we may wear formal business suits and sophisticated. We use um, sophisticated tools for our lives. We use technology in our life. Of course, that it is not only influencing our uh, habit, our behaviors, but also communication style. Communication style and language choice may also change as they strive to project a certain image to people they wish to impress. Like, for example, our colleagues, our supervisors, our boss, our, yes, and so on. And other aspects of one's identity may also have different meanings and significance at different stage in one's life. Let's say religion. Yeah, as an adult, yeah, we may feel a strong emotional attachment to our religion. Let's say Christian, but um, when we were a child, we probably didn't care about that. Or even when we became older, we could be more strongly connected to our religion. That's why the identities that people claim, they attach to them, and they may change as a consequence of the personal, economic, social, or cultural circumstances, cultural interactions. Let's say, like when we study abroad, we meet many people who come from different countries, right? And of course, we got more exposure to others groups and societies, right? Yeah, a shift and in attitudes and perceptions may also bring about the use of different identity labels. For example, in US, the terms African American or Black are used instead of color or name. Yeah. For certain labels, like many other labels around the world, because we participate or because our identities. Yeah. Now let's move to the case study. Lan is an Asian immigrant who has been married for more than 10 years with a guy from a small town in England. After many years abroad, she probably feels at home in her new world. Lan is learning hard to adapt her speech style to be like an English native speaker. She really wishes to be seen as a member of the host community, but there are things that are difficult to choose. Her physical appearance, second language accent, and also a lack of familiarity with a local social. In fact, they set her apart from the locals who still treat her like an outsider. What can we learn from this study, from this excerpt? What actually learned experience here? What actually learned expects from this, from her new life? And what actually people or local social norms that what actually people consider about learn? The answer is here. The other characteristics of the identity. Identities are both of forward and ascribed. A forward identity is the one that we wish to present or claim in an interactions, while ascribed identity is the one that others give to us or we give to someone else. By Jackson's 2004. Identity is concerned with the way individuals or groups see, define, and even express themselves, as well as how other individuals or groups define or label them. A forward, a forward identity, it refers to the process of telling others that uh, telling others what identity we wish to present or how we see ourselves. Individuals and groups can freely select some dimensions of their identities that they wish to present to others. We may choose to convey a particular image through our dress, adornments, speech, and so on and so forth. Let's talk about speech, for example. Um, Jamila, Jamila, or other people, or even me myself, I am studying. Uh, I continue my degree, higher degree, in other countries, and uh, Let's say I try to imitate the uh, the local people speak, and I try to be acknowledged as their part, as their community members, like in the examples previously. Learn here, she already got married for more than 10 years and stayed in England. Ireland expects or has a willingness to be acknowledged as the part of the community there. So that's why she is trying to learn to adapt the speech style, the language, the intonation, so on and so forth, with others or with the local people. So she expect to be in group. She expect to be a part of the particular groups then. But then here, the ascribed identity given by community or local people, because there are some behavior or non-verbal behavior here that is not suitable, that is not appropriate, or that is different from the local people there. So that's why local people still treat her like an outsider. Yeah, because it is the process of this is the ascribed identity given by the locals or others. Next is the identities are variable in silence and intensity. While each of us has multiple identities, this doesn't mean that each dimension is of equal importance to us. Yeah, every time depends on, of course, everything. Let's say uh, our identities, our certain characteristics depends on the context and situations. Let's say there will be uh, aspects or dimensions that we wish to emphasize more than other identities that probably uh, we think it is more important. Fong and McEwen, 2004, explained some members will identify with particular communicative cultural practices, while other members may choose not to partake and identify themselves as enacting the same expressions, rituals, and so forth because of differing preferences, values, attitudes, and beliefs. When we are in an environment where the majority of people speak a different language and are visibly different from us, our ethnic, our language, our national identity may become more salient. Let's learn from the case study level. But here, we also have that uh, the identity silence. It is a degree to which an identity is prominent or stands out to us in a given situation. And the silence of a particular identity can influence one's emotional state and behavior, since each identity carries with it certain understandings, let's say knowledge, beliefs, and expectations. Let us learn from this study. It will it will give us more information about this identity. Sarah is an exchange student from Afghanistan in New Zealand during Ramadan. the holy month of fasting. She's very under pressure because none of her classmates are fasting. She distances herself from her religious affiliations and chooses not to fast in order to fit in with her new peers. Meanwhile, Ratna, who is also from the same country, feels closer to her religious affiliations. It's quite different from Sarah. Eh? She was increasingly be able to see how her religious affiliations becomes more and more meaningful. Then, what can we conclude from here? Why Sarah and Ratna are different in reflecting of the new experience they got from a new environment. Of course, it is because identity, yeah, the identity, our identity is contested. Our original identity is challenged. And here, Sarah and also Ratna might experience the challenge, the contest here. Contested identity, according to James here, facets or elements of one's identity that are not accepted by the people who are in contact with. Because the majority of the group in that class, in that environment, they are not fasting. Probably they have different religion. That's why here the identity of Sarah and also Ratna are questioned by these kinds of questions. Where are you from? What is your nationality? You have an accent like this, and so on, so on. But I never think of you as blah. I don't know you because you are Spanish. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of questions. And yeah, Aratna and Sarah have different response to these situations. Why? Because identity intensity here, as explained by Collier 1990, it refers to the degree of significance of a particular identity. Yeah, people with a weak ethnicity and individuals with a strong ethnic identity. The strength of one's attachment to phases of one's identity can vary depending on the circumstances. Probably you can guess Ratna or Sarah, who have the weak ethnic identity, or a strong ethnic identity. People with a weak ethnic identity may demonstrate little interest uh, in being affiliated with other individuals from their ethnic group. Yeah. They may insist on using, let's say, if you're talking about language, they may insist to use different language. We also different clothes, different lifestyle from the majority of people who have the same ethnicity. In contrast, individuals who are with a strong ethnic identity may wear the same clothes or the same dress as the majority, or even they may actively participate uh, in a ethnic in the same ethnic community events, and also maybe they also use the same language. They're confident enough here with the difference they experience. Yeah, that's the people with a weak ethnic identity and individuals with a strong ethnic identity. So we can say that probably Ratna is with the strong ethnic identity because yeah, she can understand the circumstances, and that's okay. I don't feel any pressure. I'm with my identity. Even I'm as a minority in that circumstances. While Sarah probably is with a weak ethnic identity. She feels under pressures, and because she wants to be attached with the community, that the majority groups, she tries to imitate or adapt the styles there, yeah, the habit that the culture. Another case study here, Sahid, an international student at a well-known foreign languages campus in India, enjoyed studying there, even though the first year was very difficult for him. But in the second year, everything changed after he got a very close friend from India, Jamila. Jamila had studied in Sahid's country and could even speak Sahid's first language. Oh, can you try to predict what's happening here? Why Sahid uh, gradually changed? Now is he enjoyed his studying than used to be? Probably the answer is here, but let's try to discuss first with the characteristics of the identity. Identities are expressed verbally and non-verbally. Our language and communication style can express multiple dimensions of our identity. We intentionally express and negotiate our identities through a range of verbal and non-verbal means, depending on what messages we wish to send about ourselves to others, right? In face-to-face interactions, our communications partners are interpreting our actions and processing our appearance while making assessments about who we are and what groups we belong to. Their views about our identities may differ from our own perceptions, right? That's why our language and communication style here can express multiple dimensions of our identity, like Sahid experience. Sahid got close to Jamila because Jamila has certain uh, verbal behavior that is that interests Sahid, that have similarity with Sahid, yeah. And the thing here that Jamila shows to Sahid is that Jamila had studied in Sahid country, and even she can speak Sahid's first language. Well, we also express ourselves through a variety of verbal messages, right? And through languages that Jamila uh, mastered here. It makes Sahid feel like we have the same identity, yeah, like we experience or we are close, we have the same sense, the same feeling, yeah, because of the let's say the verbal behavior here. And actually we also express ourselves through a variety of nonverbal messages. For example, our appearance. Let's say our clothes, our jewelry, our tattoos, our posture, our hairstyle. Those communicate aspects about our identities that we wish to convey to others. You have certain, we have certain, let's say, traditional uh, behavior, traditional clothes, traditional ceremony. Then those things uh, communicate the aspects of our identities. Let's say uh, some Muslim girls may wear hijab, the head covering. Uh, the here, while this mode of dress is common in some Islamic countries, it has been banned in some secular nations such as France or other countries, because it is interpreted, it is considered as a religious marker or identity that can, of course, separate people from each other. Yeah. So those are the characteristics that we belong to. Yeah. Now let's continue with the discussions about types of identities. Identities, as we develop and become mature, we identify many different groups based on such aspects such as age, gender, language, ethnicity, social class, so on and so forth. And some aspects of our identity are linked to our personal interest and preference, while others are influenced by our geographic locations, yeah, and the message we receive from those around us, let's say from the our teachers, our parents, our um, uh, religious leaders, so on and so forth. All of these dimensions reveal who we are and can influence how we present ourselves and interact in different contexts and situations. Now let's take a look at some of the many types of identities, yeah, that can impact on our intercultural interactions and also can influence the quality of the relationships that uh, develop. Now the first is the personal identity. Here we have Odzal in 2009. Personal identity, unique qualities of ourselves, such as personality and relationship. Personal identities defines an individual in terms of his or her differences to others. Aspect of personal identity, such as age, gender, nationality, religion, hobby, etc. Those um, define our personal identity. I like football. This is my identity, personal identity. Yeah. I like music. This is also my personal identity. I am 12 years old. I am a male. I am Indonesian. I am so on and so forth. That is the personal identity. The other thing is that social identities. It includes cultural or ethnic membership, gender, sexual orientations, social class, political or religious affiliations, age, disability, professional, and also family in a relational role identities. Basically, social identity relates to how we identify ourselves in relations to others based on what we have in common. For example, so we can identify ourselves according to our religion, Christian, Muslim, Islam, Jews, Catholic, so on. And also could be according to our place of origin, Korean, South Korean, Southeast Asian, Hong Kong, Europe, European, so on and so on. Or even the professions or our education status. Let's say students from Harvard University, from particular school, so on and so forth. And also, even it can be according to the language and accent, and also our relationships with certain people. Yeah, our social identity can provide us with a sense of self-esteem and a framework for socializing as it influences how we choose to behave in a social context. The other types of the identities are cultural identity. Our emotional attachment to a particular group is impacted by how we believe others perceive, how we believe others perceive our cultural identity. Here talk about our social identities based on our cultural membership. They are our identifications with and perceived acceptance into a larger culture group into which we are socialized and with which we share a system of symbols, values, norms, and traditions. Cultural identities, the same as other identities, through the primary socialization process. Individuals internalize the socio-cultural value pattern of their community. It is through shared experiences and teaching that, let's say, members of a cultural group develop a sense of belonging in a process that it is, we refer to the cultural identity formation. Multiple elements and conditions may impact on the development of one's cultural identity. For example, the language, physical appearance, race, history, gender, sexuality, beliefs, and so on and so forth. While some individuals may feel a strong attachment to the larger cultural group, but others may also feel weak attachment, weak bond to it. Other elements of their identity may be more important than their own, than their original elements of their identity. Cultural identity may contribute to one's well-being, uh, as the affiliations with a group, yeah, can provide a sense of the security and comfort. When we belong to a particular groups, then we feel we can provide a sense of security and comfort. Yeah, these attachments can be beneficial. Yeah, strong cultural identities also have the potential to serve a barriers between the group. Minorities may feel excluded from the majority cultures, and individuals may become less accepting and tolerant of cultural practices that differ from their own. Race and ethnic identities, the other types of the identities. Before we define what is meant by racial and ethnic identities, it is important to have an understanding, yeah, of what is meant by race and ethnicity. Both race and ethnicity involve drawing boundaries between people. A conceptual distinctions can, however, be made between race and ethnicity, while racial boundaries are drawn on the basis of physical markers. Ethnic boundaries are drawn on the basis of the cultural markers. Racial identities, one's biological, genetic or genetic makeup, let's say racial phenotype. For immigrants, like for example, immigrants, an ethnic uh, identity may involve a shared sense of the origin or history with ancestors and ethnic groups in distant cultures. We feel like this is a link to one's perceptions and emotions. Yeah. When we have this develop this ethnic identity, we feel like we are linked with the affiliations with one's own ethnic groups. We are a minority identity can it refers to the oneself of belonging to a minority group, and once we becomes the majority identity for the ethnic identity, it is one's identifications with the dominant or the major group. And we feel, of course, comfort when we are in the majority identity, in the ethnic identity. Ethnicity may be very important to some peoples. It is a little concern for some or for other people too. Individuals who are affiliated with the majority ethnic groups, for example, may not think much about their ethnic identity because they are already in a comfort zone. They are already safe. Yeah. While minority members may speak, let's say, may use or may acknowledge themselves, try to be like the majority. Minority members, let's say, if we are talking about the language, they may speak a different uh, uh, what is that home language. They may also uh, um, have the or practice a different religion, and also they may wear clothing that is a particular to their group and maintain customs and traditions that distinguish them from the majority. These differences may be a source of the great pride, but for minorities, maybe no. Yeah. Other minorities may choose to blend in with the majority and downplay their ethnicity. And over time, their offspring may have little emotional connections to their ethnic group. The notions of the ethnic membership or affiliations has also become much more complex due to increasing intercultural context. Let's say, Mr. Barack Obama, the president of the US, he's of mixed heritage. His mother was white American secular humanist, yeah, but his father Is a black man, he was a Muslim law, and he's from America, right? Similar to race, the terms ethnic and ethnicity are contested as they can be used to categorize and marginalize people, let's say differentiate from the majority. Next, the types of the identities is class identity. Talking about the class identity, Martin and Nakayama here says that a sense of belonging to group that share similar economic, occupational, or social status. One's socio-economic status may also play a role in one's identity and subsequently impact on the intercultural relationship. Social class identity can also shape our perceptions and reactions to language use. For example, certain accents and dialect, and communication styles in a particular settings or and context. We are continuously communicating our economic, social, and occupational status through our verbal and non-verbal behaviors. For example, our class identity is indicated through our, let's say, our dress, our adornments, tattoos, jewelry, business suits, so on, as well as our posture, our stance. Yeah. So that's why some schools requires children to wear uniform to downplay class differences and build up a shared sense of belonging to the institutions. Yeah, that is the class identity. Our class status or economic positions in society is often reflected in our language we use and the way we communicate, yeah, both verbally and non-verbally. Let's say in a particular, in the vocabulary and dialect that we use may be linked to our level of educations and status. In a professional work, let's say, senior managers may use more direct forms of discourse and less slang than entry level workers. Yeah, people with higher level of education may employ wider range of vocabulary and in some cases may be multilingual as they have had more opportunities to study other languages and travel to other countries. Next is the language identity. Language identity, the assumed and or attribute relationship between one sense of self and means of communication, which might be known as language, as a language. Let's say English, a dialect, Georgie, or a sociolite, football speak by Block 2007. Language identity is also associated with notions of avowal and ascriptions that were explained earlier. Yeah, and individuals may wish to be affiliated with a particular social or cultural groups through the use of their second language. But first language speakers may persist in uh, viewing them as outsiders, no matter how well they master the language, right? Many dimensions of our social and cultural identities, such as gender, class, nationality, and so on, are shaped by the language that we speak. Due to the primary socializations, language becomes strongly intertwined with the culture and identity. Over time, uh, social and cultural groups develop certain ways of being, including the communication styles, or let's say the cultural script, the use of, let's say, a particular markers for politeness, yeah. Knowing the language of one's group and ancestors, of course, can provide a sense of grouping and belonging for many people. It can be a powerful makers of identity, especially when individuals find themselves in situations where the majority use different language and dialect. Yeah, that is the types of the that is the language identity. Similar to the other types of identities, language identities can change during the course of one's lifetime. You might learn other language as a child. Yeah, when you move, when you grow up, you learn other languages. Over time, your proficiency in your second language also grows to extents that you feel very confident and at is when using it in a variety of contexts in your daily life. As you form strong ties with the English speakers, you develop a sense of belonging in that linguistic community, for example. So the identity you wish to project may not be fully recognized and accepted by locals. That is the ascriptions, because it may be contested or challenged no matter how fluent you are in English. Yeah, you can still be positioned as a second language speaker since your accents and other linguistic features differ from the native speakers. Language identity is linked to the expertise, one's degree of proficiency in a particular language, and language affiliations, one's attitude toward the feelings about the language, and language inheritance, being born into family or community where the language is spoken. By Block, 2007, Lim, 1997, Frampton, 1990. That is the language identity. Another types of identity is that the multicultural identity. Multicultural identity, a sense of in a betweenness that develops as a result of frequent or multiple cultural border crossing. What does it mean? What does it mean to be multicultural? Yeah. Nowadays, in many parts of the world, individuals have more interactions with people from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds. It can be through immigrations, refugees, or even through studying abroad, so on and so forth. Yeah? There are a lot of ways that open our chance, our opportunity to have socializations with other people. Individuals who have sustained contact with people from diverse cultures, diverse cultures may develop a sense of attachment to multiple ethnic groups, or they may feel as if they have no ties or affiliations with any group in particular. Multicultural identities give us a chance to uh, to what is that? To have more identities. Yeah, we can be in a particular situations. We can be different, right? Here, people may develop hybrid or mixed identities, yeah, because of this multicultural identity. It is just because they acquire, they learn, they are socialized with different people. Next is the gender identity. When we ask to describe our identity, it is natural to mention our gender. It is also one of the ways that others often categorize us. Um, they can categorize us, they can identify us as male or female. Yeah. Gender may be based on such aspects of one's legal status, personal preferences, physical appearance, public persona, activities, and even the interests, and of course the social interactions among others. Language has also been tied to gender. How? Yeah, let's say there are some, probably if you're talking about a certain vocabulary, the differences in vocabulary and communication styles may serve as a markers for one's gender in a particular cultural context. So some words or some sentences or some taboo word cannot be uttered by female. It can only be uttered by male. Once this expressions is uttered by the female, then can be something very strange because it is probably it can be considered as impolite and so on. Yeah, gender's identities are multidimensional and constructed in particular social context through our process, our intercultural processes. Yeah, socializations. Relations between wife and husband and professions, nursing, engineering, frequently have multiple gender implications within a particular culture. This job is only for male, and this job is appropriate for female. Wife is for female, and husband is for husband is for it's male, something like that. But right now, due to the globalizing forces and the increasing interconnectedness of the world, the roles of women in a particular area, particular elements are changing along with the communication styles, language use, and values. Nowadays, women in many cultures are in the professionals that were once reserved for males and vice versa. Just as a gender-related behaviors vary among individuals and within cultures, notions of what it means to be male or female or masculine or feminine also differ. The differences between masculinity and femininity are symbolically embodied, performed, and communicated within our specific cultural context through the way we walk, through our gesture, our speech, touch, eye contact patterns, through the way we use physical space and gender activities we participate in, through our hairstyles, clothing, the use of makeup or not, and through color, smell, and adornments. That is the identity of the gender. They are categorized based on certain criteria, certain class. Yeah, for the female should be doing this, and for male should have not done this, so on so forth. The other is the sexual identity. It refers to the biological and psychological characteristic that define men and women, whereas male and female are sex categories, masculine and feminine are gender classifications. Some sexual orientations uh, becomes the identity. Initially, it relates to the biological and psychological. And right now, sexual identity from we what is that? It refers to how one oneself, how one thinks of oneself in terms of who one is sexually and let's say romantically attracted to. Yeah. While related to the sexual identity and sexual behavior, one's sexual orientations refers to the desires, fantasies, and attachment to the sexual partners. Right now, sexual identity may or may not relate to one's actual sexual orientations. For example, individuals may be attracted to members of the same sex, yeah, who can be homosexual, or it can be heterosexuality or bisexuality. These are their sexual identity. Yeah. The way we view and categorize sexualities may differ from those of individuals who have been socialized in different cultural environments. Language used to identify people according to the sexual preferences can also vary. Yeah. Next, the age identity, the outcomes of the processes through which one identifies with or distances oneself from different aspect of the aging process. You are here, you are young, or even you are old. So this aging differentiate or categorize or show the identity. This, for example, this plays only for particular group of age, let's say under 17 or uh, above 17. Yeah, this is this can be seen in our daily life, our regular life. Let's say, yeah, certain movies cannot be watched by people who are under 17 because they are not mature enough, let's say. And also the religious identity. Religious identity basically refers to the one's sense of belonging to a particular group. Here, religious identity concerned with the process by which individuals decide what their relationship to the religion will be. In many contexts, messages from the family or religious figures begin at very early age and are reinforced through various rituals like the prayers and also ceremonies, baptism for Christians. And yeah, one's affiliations with a particular religion may also be conveyed and reinforced through one's dress, our traditional or even religious dress. Yeah, for Muslim, they use for women's, yeah, they use the uh, head covering, yeah, to cover their hairs. They use hijab, they wear hijab, yeah, so on and so forth. This is the religious identity. Physical and mental ability identity too. Yeah, all people have the physical ability identity, as each of us has both physical capabilities and limitations. Yes, no human is perfect, but sometimes it becomes the identity. Okay, you have the, let's say, um, disabilities or certain weaknesses like blindness, deafness, or inability to speak. Throughout our life, we may strive to overcome multiple dimensions of the physical ability, especially when as we age. Some people are temporarily disabled, like broken leg or jaw, while others are born with disabilities. Yeah. And yeah, we also have the mental abilities identity that is linked to our cognitive abilities. Let's say the degree of the intelligence or even the mental health, stable, depressed, yeah, so on and so forth. And also we have the national identity. Most people have the national identity, which is related to their affiliations with the sense of belonging to a particular state or nations. One's national identity may be associated with specific symbols like flags, flowers, or colors, or even language, but dialects, bilingualism policy, words mixing, so on and so forth. And also um, ethnicity, music, political system, religion, yeah, so on and so forth. Even verbal and non-verbal symbols may serve as the bond for many nationals. It is important to recognize that people within a nation may have very different understandings and emotions in relations to its symbols. The strength of one's national identity may vary over time. Let's say when someone is under threat, whether real or imagined, one national identity tends to strengthen and or even draw individuals closer to other people from the same nation. But however, it can also lead to negative perceptions and misperceptions if people who are affiliated with other nations are uh, treated badly. Yeah, of course, it leads to the negative perceptions about certain national identity. Oh, they are terrorists. Most terrorists come from that uh, country. So whenever I met somebody who is coming from that country, so I labeled them with, oh, that is the national identity. His national identity is the terrorist. Oh, so it's very dangerous. So here, the national identity can be resulting in both ways, positively or negatively. And also we have the regional identity. Right? Linked to the national identity, regional identity is also a part of individual's identity, which is root in region of residence. Basically, it involves a sense of belonging similar to that of national identity, but it is in a smaller scale or level. Yeah, it is inspired by cultural, ethnic, religious, linguistic, or political ties as well as geography. Let's say in Indonesia, we have many tribes and we have many different accents. Every region, we have different Asian accent. The one who comes from certain accents, come from certain region, that is their regional identities. Oh, he is Japanese, he is Sundanese, he is Bataknese. These are the examples of tribe in Indonesia. That is the regional identity. And we also have the global identity. In the previous chapter, we also discussed the globalizations, which has made our world increasingly interconnected and also facilitating mobility and interactions between people from diverse backgrounds. Global identity, a sense of belonging in a worldwide culture that is often associated with the use of international language. Let's say English, right? We human beings are now being challenged to realize that we are something more than citizens of separate nations, members of different race, and followers of different religions. We are also global citizens by Gerson 2000. We also have that is called as the organizational identity. People may also develop an organizational identity That is a sense of attachment to organizations, whether in their social, educational, religious, or professional life. Once we join in a particular university, so we becomes that organizational identity. Once we join in a particular workplace, then we follow the rules in that workplace, and we hold the belief in the workplace, and we have the organizational identity, or even in a religious, social, or educational, or other things. Yeah. And organizational identity can be linked to the notions of communities of practice. Community defines of practice as an aggregate of people who come together around mutual engagement in an endeavor. And you know that organizational identity, um, it is about the ways of doing things. It is about the ways of thinking, ways of talking, beliefs, values, power relations. These are criteria. If we are joining in a particular environment, then we do the same things. We think as a majority also do, and also the beliefs that majority have, values, and also power relations. We have the organizational identity, and also we have the professional identity. Organization, professional identity here encompass beliefs, attitude, and understanding about one's role within the context. Related to the notions of organizational identity is the formation of professional identity, refers to an individual sense of belonging in a particular profession. Let's say when I'm teaching, I am a nurse, I am a businessman, I am policeman, so on and so forth. And here we bring our professional identity as a teacher, as a doctor, as so on and so on. Professional identity formations refers to how individuals develop a sense of what it means to be a member of a particular profession, and how this indeed identify uh, how this identity distinguishes them from the other professional groups. There will be certain languages that is only applicable on in a particular culture or particular groups of particular job. Let's say they use their jargon for the medical jargon. It is only understandable, it is only understood only in this group, and other group will not understand. So language will be different based on the who you are and what profession you have, so on so. And virtual cyber fantasy identity. Cyber culture has emerged from the use of computer network for communications, business, and entertainment. In this era of advanced information technology, cyber culture gives us the opportunity to what is that? To communicate, to see, to meet many people from other people. And we can also have a group. We can have the identity groups. The internet, gaming, and multi-user domains are spawning new types of identity. In online virtual communities such as online chat rooms and other social media, yeah, the user may create a virtual or cyber identity or e-identity, which serves as an interface between the physical person and the virtual person that other users view on their computer screen. When you become a member of an online community, you usually have some control over how much personal information if you wish to reveal about yourself. You can choose to let others users see how you actually look, or you can post the photo of someone else. You can also decide if others can hear your voice or not. That is the virtual or cyber and fantasy identity. Yes. The desire to remain anonymous reflects the need to eliminate those critical features of your identity that you do not want to display in a particular environment group. Cyber culture and the possibility of the anonymity have significantly altered the ways many people communicate on a day-to-day basis. Spending too much time immersed in virtual reality with one cyber identity can cause some to lose the touch with the real world. And it happens everywhere. Yeah. So this is the cyber identity. And fantasy identity, which center on the characters from science fiction movie, comic books, and so on and so forth. People pretend to be like them. They have the actions. They wear the dress code like their favorite actors, favorite movie figures in the anime, in a manga, or in other cartoon, and it shows the fantasy identity. Yeah, there are a lot of countries who are doing these things. They have this fantasy identity. They make the group. They make, for example, uh, certain animations, cartoon lovers. So they have their identity. They have the fantasy identity. They try to be, they anonymous their identity and they change with the fantasy identity. That is the fantasy identities. Now we have come to the end of this course. And we have talked about the identities. We have talked about different characteristics of the identities, many types of the identities. Now the discussions questions. Please, you may write and you may discuss with your friends. Number one, who are you? Make a list of 10 statements about your identity. Second, in a small group, you may discuss how language use and gender identity roles may differ in different cultural contexts. The third one, how do you define yourself in your home environment? Does this change when you are outside your home country or region? You may discuss it at home. I think that's it about today's class. Today's discussions is very comprehensive and very much useful. And we'll have another meetings. We'll have another topics to discuss in the future. So thank you. See you.